suggest a different sort of question, and maybe this is the one to pick up at this time. We've got a new diocesan bishop. When Bishop Lee became bishop, he tweaked the calling process a little bit. And we see the call of the diocese, a number of people who Bishop Lee had recommended. His predecessor wasn't present in the process quite the way that he was. Have you got any reading yet of the way in which Shannon Johnson will influence, or we're going to get a lot of people from Mississippi? We got a lot of North Carolinians after Bishop Lee came.
Yes.
Coming from North. Any thought about early signs of the way in which a change in episcopate will affect our process?
He addressed the interim clergy last spring on this subject, and his thoughts were not fully formed. But he did indicate that he was going to immediately, upon becoming the diocesan bishop, to call a canon of the ordinary who would take on the process, and he's done that. Canon of the ordinary begins in January or February, or right after convention, right after council, I believe. So the canon of the ordinary will take over that process. Bishop Shannon is himself well-schooled in congregational development issues, which is why I like him so much. We speak the same language. So he takes a personal interest in that process and in the calling process. So I suspect he will be personally involved through the canon of the ordinary. That's all I know. That's now, as to whether he's going to favor certain kinds of clergy, I don't know. But he's going to pay attention, I think, carefully to what he sees as the needs in a particular place and what makes for a good match. And Lindsay Ryland will also, of course, continue to be involved in that process. That's all I know.
So I think somewhere in the profile there will be a question as to what kind of barbecue director.
All right.
Yes. And if you don't know what barbecue is, then you're probably not.
If you think it's a verb, you're out. Yes.
I just had a question about the survey specifically. And I got the survey via email, and I thought it was really good. There were some really thought-provoking questions. And some of my answers, I was realizing that I was asking for a lot in one person. And that was really thought-provoking.
Jesus is not available.
So my question had more to do with the inclusiveness of the survey, and I was intrigued this morning when Joe mentioned the congregational meetings as well. And I just wondered, there were so many good questions, but it was an electronic version. And I was wondering, for the people who don't necessarily have access to that electronic version, is there going to be a way to respond to that survey in a non-electronic fashion without necessarily having to come to the congregational meeting?
Yes, it will also be printed so that people can, yes. Right. But we figure the number of people in this parish now who cannot do that electronically is very small. It's about 5%. It's pretty small.
Now, we've talked a bit about what it's like from the planning and direct participation in the search process at this point. Let me just ask, for those of you sitting in the pews, how comfortable are you feeling with the process? Do you feel like we're on a reasonable path? Are you worried or concerned? Where are you all at this point?
I'm really happy to be having this discussion because I was like right at the last month or so thinking, I wonder how things are going. I would love to have a list posted somewhere on the bulletin board out there or on the website or whatever. It may be on the website. I looked a month ago and didn't see it. Who's on each committee? I would be very curious to know how the committees. I mean, I understand how they're selected basically, but who's on each one? I'm curious about that. And then for a while there was up on the bulletin board, I didn't see it this morning, a packet that described our process a little bit more in depth, and that was up there probably about half a year ago, I think.
We need to update that. I think it came down because it was a description of a prior review of the process, and we need to put the current one up, both there and on the website.
Yeah,
I think it was a great idea. Because it was kind of like I heard about there was an initial meeting where you talked about the process, and then just like you, after several weeks, you're like, I wonder if they're doing anything. I wonder where they are. Well, what's the timeline again? And sort of in the normal course of events, you forget what the process is. You don't know whether they're doing what they're doing, et cetera, et cetera. So it is helpful to have updates.
And part of that posted info, having a timeline on there also, I think would be really useful.
Yeah, I was thinking the same thing, just to show where we are, what the process is, where we are on that process.
Yeah,
And just generating some excitement about it.
yeah.
The United Church of Christ has I wish we did this. United Church of Christ has a poster that they generated at their church headquarters with all of the markers on it for the search process. You just keep marking those off as you do them. But we can manufacture something like that. Absolutely.
Scorecard. One comment. I was thinking as you're describing the process and how long it takes, and comparing that to a normal job search for a manager and how quick that process often is and why it takes so much longer in our situation.
I think in comparison, you're thinking of a business thing, think of the third option, hiring from the federal government.
Yeah, right.
So we're not that.
Yeah, the reason why it takes so much longer, they're twofold. First of all, it's a committee that's doing the hiring. So you have to get consensus constantly of the committee. And it's extremely important to do that because the committee in theory represents a diverse parish. So it takes time to build that consensus. Well, there may be three reasons. The second reason is they only meet in strategic planning, it's only meeting an hour and a half a week, whereas a search team for a CEO in a business might meet all day for a week and finish in 5 days. Third thing, which is perhaps the most important of all, is that you're not just hiring a CEO. It's more like dating and getting married. You're going to have a relationship with this person. So understanding the best thing, I always say to a couple, the best thing you can bring to a relationship is a good self-understanding. So the first thing they must do is have a good self-understanding. And the second thing they must do is try to have a pretty good understanding of the person they think they're calling, which means that he or she has to have a good self-understanding. So for those three reasons, it takes time. Does it take a ridiculously long amount of time? I think you could make that claim. But what we've learned, though, is that having a good interim time is also a good breathing period for a parish. And intentional interims like me come in and just make a lot of trouble so that everyone is really happy to see the interim leave and stability come with the new rector. Which is, I go to worship shortly. Any more questions? Good questions all. And if you have questions during we will respond to your suggestions and get some more information up on the bulletin board and on the website about who's on those committees and what their progress is. That's easy enough to do. So I thank you for that. We'll do that. Bob?
Just a quick update on stewardship.